If you are like me, you didn't understand the point of trying to draw something from memory when you initially heard about that exercise. I mean, what is the point, right? Why would you try to memorize something and then draw it from memory when you can draw it from observation instead? Well, my opinion on that eventually changed, and let me convince you while you listen to this podcast and draw. If you've followed me for a while, you know that I'm a big fan of studying artists who I admire. You can just learn a lot by trying to figure out their process. And also, if you're like me, you probably admire Kim Jung Gi's art. If you haven't seen it, do check it out. It's astonishing to see him just draw realistic scenes freehand without any underdrawing, seemingly from imagination. I wanted to learn how to do that, so I went and watched the videos. I found videos where you could see him draw in real time, and I tried to draw with him. I use the word try because he draws so fast that I kept having to pause the video. The way he can just make each mark perfect in one go is just impressive. I also went and listened to his videos. He'll often explain how he constructs boxes and then puts people and objects in them. That's how he places people and things correctly in perspective. Fair enough, great, but how does he come up with all that detail? If you read his interviews, you get some hints. When he was in the army, if I understood correctly, he didn't have drawing tools available to him, so what he did was he tried to memorize what he saw and then he drew it from memory. And now he says he can draw around 70% of what he wants to draw just from memory. And that makes sense if you think about it. The two combine nicely. He constructs boxes to place people and objects in, and he memorizes all the details that go with these humans and objects, and he just draws them in. And he's able to make it look like making these amazing pen or brush strokes is easy, and that is because he practices so much. In one interview he said that since he's married he doesn't draw until the sun comes up anymore, only once a month. He mentioned having a stack of photos which he memorizes, then he puts the photos away and draws them from memory. A stack of photos, seriously. I often still have a hard time memorizing one image, but I imagine it might be easier for him because he's already memorized so much. He just needs to memorize the delta, the extra stuff that is unique to that photo. For this podcast, I will focus on the drawing from memory part because that is what I looked into at first. I decided to try it. I took reference images and I studied them, and then I put them away and tried to draw them from memory. I soon discovered that it was best if I started with something simple, like a minion. You do have to kind of stay within your reach. The process goes like this. 1. You study the image and you try to remember the relative proportions and positions of the different elements, and you try to remember the details. And then you put it away, and invariably you immediately think, wait, what was the angle of that one line again? Resist looking at the reference. The whole point of the exercise is to find out what is missing from your memory. If you cheat by looking at the reference, you can place that element correctly, but it immediately disappears from your memory again, and you lost the opportunity to memorize it. Draw lightly. Sketch it lightly with a pencil or a ballpoint maybe. I sometimes do it with a light blue pen. That is also possible. Then, when you're done, look at the reference image again and compare it to your sketch. Now you can draw over the light initial sketch and correct the mistakes you see. Were the proportions right? Were things at the right angle? Did you misremember or forget important details? Then put the reference away and draw it from memory again. And if the reference image was within your reach, you will have the mind-blowing satisfaction of being able to draw the thing from memory. Seriously, you should try it. It's an utterly cool thing to see happen on the page. Now you can repeat it several times, but it is also a good idea to repeat it over several days and then weeks, because initially the information is in your short-term memory. By repeating the exercise over days and even weeks, you get to copy the information to your long-term memory. I initially did this exercise with parts of anatomy because I thought it might be useful to memorize these, but I discovered something astounding. I also got better at drawing things I had not practiced that way. Let me repeat this. I got better at drawing things I had not practiced through drawing from memory. I think that what happens is that our brain actually does remember what things look like, but your brain is not able to access that memory. The drawing from memory exercise might be helping you gain access to that memory. Suddenly, you can draw a bunny more accurately from imagination, even though you haven't practiced drawing that, at least not for a while. I think what also happens is that since you draw entirely from memory and you are just looking at the page, you train yourself to become better at sensing when a line is right or when it is off. You become better at eyeballing things. I think it also helps come up with new designs because you start to learn to trust your instinct for when a line is right. It's the opposite from drawing from observation, which you should learn first before you do the drawing from memory exercise, by the way, where you look mostly at the model and you look at the page as little as possible. I'll say this, the exercise is hard work. You have to really concentrate, you can't listen to podcasts or music, and you have to really focus, and you, or I at least, can't do it for very long. And it becomes tiring and you feel less like drawing if you do this exercise too much. So do it in moderation, do it occasionally. I had noticed that even after a few days of doing this drawing exercise, my drawing skills had improved quite a bit. So if you do the exercise, do it with moderation. 15 minutes a day seems to be a good goal. A next level is to study reference and then to draw it from another angle. This is, I guess, what Kim Jung Gi does constantly. He has memorized what things look like and then he places them in boxes that are arbitrarily oriented and positioned in space. Another thing you can do, which Kim Jung Gi also did apparently, is memorize something you see during the day and then draw it from memory when you are back home, the next day even. I got this idea from Marshall Vandorf's excellent bootcamp on composition, where he has students do that daily. This results in drawings they can use as the basis for a composition. Kimon Nicolaides also calls this the most important exercise in his book, The Natural Way to Draw. And here's a mind-blowing insight. That means that you can be drawing without having drawing tools with you. I've seen several people talk about how they then go about memorizing something when they are out and about. One person mentioned tracing what they saw in the air with their finger, kind of drawing with their finger. To me, that already reeks of drawing from observation, but if it works, it works. What I try to do is I look at the scene or thing and then I close my eyes and I try to recall what I saw. I try to see it again, then I open my eyes and try to figure out what I had forgotten. Then I close my eyes again, etc. One thing to note is that the latter technique is not for everyone. Some people cannot visualize things in their mind and this is called aphantasia. Someone with aphantasia had contacted me and I asked them to try to do the drawing from memory exercise the following way, a way I also often use. Memorize the shapes by memorizing the lines, how they go, how they are connected to each other. See how that line is almost horizontal but tilts downwards, and see how a line goes down almost vertically from that point and then 45 degrees angle down and to the left, etc. They tried this by memorizing shape after shape and, building up the image that way, they were eventually able to draw the whole thing from memory. The exercise is not very new. Marie Elizabeth Cavey published a book called Drawing from Memory, the Cavey Method for Learning to Draw from Memory, which you can download for free from archive.org. It was published in 1871. Kimon Nicolaides' book The Natural Way to Draw, in which he describes drawing from memory as the most important exercise, was published in 1941, after he had died in 1938. The exercise is exercise 14 on page 52, and the exercise is called the daily composition. To summarize, the exercise is to, for at most 15 minutes, again 15 minutes, draw a scene or object which you saw in the past 24 hours. A woman letting her dog out, or a man getting out of a car, or two workers taking a break at the construction site, etc. Something you saw on the streets. In order to make sure you always have something to draw, make a schedule of where you will go each day so that you have some visual input. Use the trick I mentioned before and close your eyes and try to see the scene. Then open your eyes and fill your memory with the additional information that you missed. Nicolaides also mentions that you should try to imagine what that space can be used for, how people can negotiate the space. Draw relatively small. He mentions 5 by 7 inches, but I like to work on 4 by 6 inches, the size of a postcard. At any length, that doesn't matter that much. Draw it fast and easily and record what you remember seeing there and what was happening there. And try to draw the whole thing as one big thing and not separate loose elements. Try to see it as a whole. Don't fix the drawing later on, but continue to do the next drawing the next day. Do not try to make the drawing complex or difficult. Don't try to force the image to tell a story. Don't overthink it. Just try to draw a scene you remembered from yesterday from memory as good as you can. It's just a quick sketch and it doesn't have to be good. As he says it, the drawings don't have to be right, and in fact they can all be wrong. What matters is that you do the exercise. See it as just a quick warm-up sketch before you start drawing or painting or sculpting, etc. Nicolaides says that this is the most important exercise you can do every day, and do this if you do nothing else, and to do it for the rest of your life, if at all possible. Darren R. Rousar also wrote a really good book on the subject called Memory Drawing, Perceptual Training and Recall, which was first published in 2013. He has a website called sitesize.com where you can take a course that takes you 15 minutes a day. Again, 15 minutes a day seems to be important. 15 minutes is perhaps just enough so that it doesn't become too hard to maintain the habit. I hope you try this drawing exercise. I honestly wish I had known about it sooner. Fine Art Academy forced me to draw from observation, to look at the model as much as possible and at the paper as little as possible, and I wish I had known years sooner that doing the opposite is also a really important exercise. Of course, drawing from observation is actually also drawing from memory, because when you turn your eye to the paper, you draw what you just memorized through careful observation. So all drawing from observation is also actually drawing from memory, making the drawing from memory exercise an even more important exercise. This is all I know about the drawing from memory exercise. I hope you found it useful information and that you will try it out and that it will help you as much as it has helped me also. This really is one of the important drawing exercises. Please consider subscribing to my newsletter over at practicedrawingthis.com. I send out a newsletter with an art-related editorial and a drawing exercise. Thank you for listening.